There's something oddly theatrical about being a man. The deep voice, the stoic nod, the mysterious I'm fine when your entire life is falling apart. Welcome to today's episode of Cortex and Cosmos, where we talk about Faux Machismo, the tragic comedy of manhood. Don't worry, this isn't another lecture where I stand in front of you and say, masculinity is toxic, and everyone zones out by the minute 3. We are going to take a trip through philosophy, psychology, and neuroscience to figure out why some men treat vulnerability like it's gluten and act like they are allergic to it. The philosophical absurdity of being a man. Let's start with philosophy because, of course, we will. Remember Aristotle? He said, virtue is about balance, courage, not recklessness, confidence, not arrogance. The golden mean business. But somewhere down the line, someone looked at that and whispered, balance? Nah. Let's go for emotional constipation instead. So what happens? Machismo. Machismo is like that loud insecure Wi-Fi signal in the cafe shouting I'm strong, while everyone else is browsing on 0.2 Mbps. It's the philosophical distortion of strength, where being powerful becomes more important than being peaceful. And society loves it. Movies, songs, Instagram reels, all full of men punching walls instead of talking to a therapist. I mean, come on, if Batman had spent 5 sessions on the couch, Gotham wouldn't have needed the bat signal. Just saying. Philosophically, machismo is a tragic script. The man must hide his cracks, so he never becomes whole. He must dominate, so he never needs care. He must always win, so he never needs help. Externally, he seems invincible. Internally, he's balancing on a seesaw over quicksand. Psychology, how the brain learns to act like a bouncer. Now moving inwards, how does the psyche gets handed this machismo manual? Psychologically, machismo starts early. Picture a little boy who falls, cries, and hears, "Don't cry, be a man." That one sentence is basically the user's manual for emotional dysfunction. From there, the brain learns feelings equals to weakness. So it develops defense mechanism, repression, suppression, and my personal favorite, the aggressive gym membership acquisition. I will bench sadness into oblivion. Studies show that men who score high on traditional masculinity norms are far more likely to avoid seeking help for depression or anxiety. Because apparently, talking to a psychologist is weak, but drinking protein shakes named Predator Juice 9000, that's totally fine. And it's not even entirely their fault. Society conditions them to equate control with safety. The less they feel, the less they'll think they'll break. But what happens when you keep bottling it up? Eventually someone cuts you off in traffic and boom, you're screaming like a Greek tragedy with a steering wheel in your hand. Let's also talk about loneliness. Traditional masculinity norms emphasize independence, stoicism, endurance, and those very traits are linked to reduced social connectedness and increased loneliness in men. So you have got a man who is told to never need help, and then he does need help, and there is no script for that. Enter frustration, isolation, resentment. The split happens, the part of you that must be unassailable and the part of you that aches, doubts, fails. The more the ideal part dominates, the more the hidden part is exiled. Until it starts crashing parties, in dreams, in outbursts, in belly-aching depression. Let's talk about neuroscience. Testosterone meets existential dread. Alright, nerd alert. Let's talk about brains, hormones, circuits. Because we are doing this deep, but I promise to still crack jokes. They might be funny or might not be funny, that is up to your perception. Imagine the male brain under machismo as a computer stuck on performance mode, always on alert, always ready to assert dominance. This isn't chill mode, this is boss level stress mode. Neuroscience tells us that chronic emotional suppression activates the HP axis, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the body's stress superhighway. Cortisol spikes, autonomic arousal zooms up. So when men suppress emotions, their bodies think they are in a jungle, surrounded by lions. But in reality, there are just overdue bills and repressed childhood traumas. Another finding in studies of emotional regulation, men and women showed different neural activation patterns. For example, in a cognitive reappraisal task, women showed stronger increase in prefrontal cortex regions associated with reappraising negative events, while men showed lesser increase in those control regions and greater decreases in the amygdala. Translation: men may rely more on autonomic suppression rather than consciously working through emotions. It's like the brain saying, emotion, block it. Next. In the review of emotion regulation strategies by Deborah Cutley, they contrast two big strategies: cognitive reappraisal, which is healthy, versus expressive suppression, which is less healthy. Suppression comes after the emotional response is fully active, which makes it harder and more resource intensive. Which means every time the macho script tells a man to shut their emotions down, his brain is working overtime trying to keep up appearances, and that overload has cost. It saps memory, increases rumination, reduces social performance. Let's add hormones. Testosterone boosts competitiveness, confidence, physical power. Great. But when mixed with insecurity and a culture of suppression, it becomes ego on steroids, literally. And the slower maturation of the prefrontal cortex in males, which is our voice for reason, means there's more room for limbic system, emotion system, and older survival circuits to dominate. So you end up with the limbic system screaming fight or run, while prefrontal cortex is like, maybe we could just talk, but drama is more macho, so suppression kicks in. And here's a kicker: suppression doesn't actually reduce the internal emotion experience. The brain still senses it. The behavioral expression is muted, sure, but the heat is still there. Studies show suppression may reduce outward signs of emotion, but doesn't necessarily reduce internal emotional arousal. And over time, suppressed emotions accumulate like unfiled emails. So what do we get? A body on high alert, a brain doing overtime, a mind that's pretending everything's fine. Welcome to the tragic comedy of machismo. Philosophy meets biology, meets bad life choices. Let's pause and sit in this messy overlap. Philosophy says, know thyself. Psychology says, feel thyself. Machismo says, suppress thyself and buy a bigger bike. It's funny in kind of a sad way. In trying so hard to be alpha, many men lose touch with what actually makes them human. Empathy, curiosity, vulnerability, the parts that make relationships and life richer. I sometimes think machismo is like a badly coded operating system. It keeps crashing because it can't handle emotions larger than mild irritation. And each crash creates a patch of rage, a download of guilt, an update of isolation. And it's contagious. Fathers, peers, influencers, they all pass it on. The don't cry virus spreads faster than any pandemic. That's why when we talk about masculinities now, yes, plural, one of the major themes is relationality. Being a man not as a solitary hero, but as a connected human. When emotional stoicism stands in the way of connection, loneliness creeps in. When you combine dominance, control, suppression, and low social support, you get a dangerous mix. Increased risk of aggression, including intimate partner violence, has been linked with suppression of emotional expression and dominance and control dynamics. So the mask of machismo isn't only hurting the wearer, it's hurting others too. Reclaiming masculinity without the macho's costume. Here's the twist. Machismo isn't inherently evil, it's just scared. It's fear dressed up as confidence. It's the nervous system saying, if I get my guard down, I'll collapse. It's the brain going, emotions, danger. So it locks the doors, throws away the key, and then wonders why nobody shows up. But the brain is plastic, changeable. Neural pathway can form new habits, new patterns. Emotional openness, reflection, even humor can shift things. Men who express vulnerability show evidence of lower cortisol levels, improved relational outcomes, and yes, their body literally calm down when they stop pretending to be the Terminator. Philosophically, this is about redefining masculinity, not as domination but as depth, not as unbreakable armor but as integrative strength, power plus tenderness, control plus connection. Because as Soren Kierkegaard said, despair is being trapped in a false self. Machismo is exactly that. A costume so heavy it suffocates the person wearing it. One research review on emotional regulation shows that individuals who habitually use suppression instead of healthier strategies like reappraisal or acceptance tend to have worse social functioning, more negative effect, and neural patterns reflecting higher cognitive load. That means staying macho may cost you your brain bandwidth. So true strength isn't about being unbreakable, but being able to rebuild yourself every time you do break without blaming others for it. It's the courage to show up and ask for help and say, I'm not okay, and still keep going. Men don't need permission to be vulnerable, they need space for it. So, to the guys listening, being macho doesn't make you powerful, it just makes your cortisol levels spike and your relationships shorter than your attention span. And to everyone else, next time you see a man flexing his biceps, more than his empathy, don't roll your eyes. Maybe just smile and think, that's a scared prefrontal cortex trying its best. Because behind all that armor, the six-pack, the stoic silence, the I am fine, there's usually a person begging for permission to feel something without it being called weakness. Maybe strength isn't about how much pain you can hide, but how much truth you can hold. Maybe the bravest thing a man can do isn't to find, but to stop fighting himself. And I want to end with something that captures that perfectly. Franz Kafka once wrote, when you stand in front of me and look at me, what do you know of the griefs that are in me, and what do I know of yours? And if I were to cast myself down before you and weep and tell you, what more would you know about me than you know about hell when someone tells you it is hot and dreadful? For that reason alone, we human beings ought to stand before one another as reverently, as reflectively, as lovingly as we would stand before the entrance to hell. Thank you. This is Ayush. You were listening to or watching Cortex and Cosmos. I'll see you in another one. Thank you. Bye.